The purpose of this presentation is to teach you how to write an argumentative essay for the IELTS exam. Let's have a look first at key question words that signal a argumentative essay. First of all, what is your opinion? Second, what do you believe? Third, to what extent do you agree or disagree? With this one, it's a little bit different than the others. The word extent means how much. So with this essay, we need to not only talk about whether we agree or disagree, but also how much. We're going to use this as a model for this presentation because, well, first of all, it's a common question type, and secondly, it's a good idea to get into the habit of talking about the extent even if the question doesn't require it. Then finally, do you agree or disagree? Again, even if this is the question, I would also put in the extent that you agree or disagree. For the purpose of this presentation, let's look at the example question. Computers are being used more and more in education, and some say there will soon be no role for the teacher in education. And then our task, which we've discussed, to what extent do you agree or disagree? First of all, let's look at the steps in planning your essay. First of all, I recommend that you underline key vocabulary in the question and write words with the same or related meaning. This serves a couple of purposes. First of all, we can make sure that we understand the topic clearly. In this case, the topic's really about whether we can get rid of teachers and just replace them with computers. Then second of all, we should think about what kind of response is needed. In this case, we've already talked about it. It's an argumentative essay. But there's two other common types of responses that also occur in the exam. The other ones are a two-question essay, such as problem and solution, or a both sides and opinion essay. But for this presentation, we're just going to have a look at the argumentative essay, and I'll cover some of the other essay types later, or also you can look on my website because I've already got some documents related to that. The third thing we want to do is to brainstorm key points or key arguments for our answer. So let's look at step one in a bit more detail. In this case, I've underlined the key vocabulary. We've got computers, used more and more, education, no role, teacher, education. So as I said, it's really about, can we fire the teachers and replace them with computers? Scary thought, especially for me as I'm a teacher. And then how can we rephrase some of these words? Well, computers, we could talk about technology. Later in your essay, you might also talk about the internet and perhaps even smartphones. The used more, we can use some level 7 vocabulary such as prevalent and widespread. No role, it's really talking about no need or redundant. Redundant means not necessary or outdated even, such as pages and BB calls are kind of redundant now because we have mobile phones, or typewriters are redundant because we have computers. And then teachers, we can rephrase, probably the best is educator, and then later on in your essay you could probably talk about tutors. Then education, we can talk about learning. We can also talk about schools, since most of the learning these days is occurring in schools, or at least it should be. Then step 2, we should decide what kind of response is needed. Well, we already said it, it's an argumentative essay, and in this case the whole essay should be about your opinion. You should be using words like I think and I believe. And you should stay away from words like some people think, because this is about your opinion. Also, don't forget to mention the extent that you agree or disagree. And really, we've got three options. I like 1 and 2 the best. We can totally agree or disagree. In this case, all our arguments should support why we agree or disagree. We shouldn't cover both sides if we say we totally agree or disagree. If we want to cover both sides of the argument, in other words, give reasons why we agree, but also give reasons why we disagree, this is called a concession, and it's often signaled by a word like however or nevertheless. Then we could use strongly. In this case, whichever side we support would be about 70 to 90%. So, for instance, if you strongly agree that we can get rid of teachers, then most of your essay would be about the strengths of computers. And then you might have a small paragraph talking about in what situations we still need teachers. And then with a somewhat agree or disagree, that means we can support one of the sides about 60 to 70%, maybe have a very large paragraph, or probably even better 2 paragraphs to support the reason why we agree or disagree, and then one smaller paragraph about the other side of whether it was agree or disagree. Depends on what you've chosen for your essay. Alright, moving on to step 3, we should brainstorm key points for the answer. It's often good to do this too before you decide on your position about whether you agree or disagree and the extent. So here's some of the reasons we might say for why we agree. And in this case, agreeing means we think we can get rid of the teachers. So we want to talk about what are the advantages of learning from computers. And probably the biggest one is the convenience. With a computer, you can learn anytime, anywhere. So you can learn any time of the day, 3 in the morning if you wish, and anywhere you can take your computer. So, for instance, you could study at Starbucks at 3 in the morning. Quite attractive. Then another reason we could get rid of teachers perhaps, or another strength of computers, is that they may be more exciting. We can watch videos, we can have audio, we can have multimedia, and not only that, we can also choose what we want to learn. Then we can move on to the other side, disagree. And now we're talking about what we need teachers for. Well, first of all, teachers can teach about morals and ethics. So it's not just about teaching knowledge. Perhaps we could learn knowledge from computers, but how about morals and ethics? So that could be a valuable function that teachers serve, especially in high schools and elementary schools. And then a second reason could be that teachers give students important communication and interpersonal skills. So the idea here is that students come into the classroom and not only do they learn knowledge, but through communicating with the teacher or else their classmates, they're learning important skills that they may not get if they stay home and learn from a computer. There's other arguments we could make as well. For example, teachers can motivate and punish students. But anyway, we've got a couple of ideas for each here. Then we could decide on our position. If we totally disagreed, then we could just focus on these points. If we wanted to somewhat agree, we could perhaps still include these 2 points and then pick one of these points. The key point is to get balance. We can't say we somewhat disagree and then talk too much about where you agree. Then the essay loses balance. Then the position of the essay doesn't make sense. So it doesn't really matter what you choose, whether you agree or disagree, or even the extent, as long as it's supported inside the body of your essay so that you get the balance, so you get the valuable cohesion and coherence.